It has happened. I am awake. You don't get to this point by meditating. You don't get to this point by praying. You don't get to this point with religion. You get to this point by subtraction, not addition. There's nothing you can do to get to this point. You have to subtract from the ego what you think you are. You have to subtract from the ego your sex, your nationality, your race, your name. All of these things you were born into. You didn't name yourself. You existed before you were named. You happen to be a certain nationality because you were born into that nationality. You happen to be a certain race because you were born into that race. Once this foundational false identity is formed, all choices after that fact that are made through that identity. And remember, that identity is subjective. What kind of car do I drive? It depends on my education. My education depends on where I happen to go to school, or where I was raised, or what nation I'm in, whether that tuition is free or not, whether higher education is even a possibility. All of these differences among people are all subjective reality. It's not real reality, because there's the only unifying fact that we all share is before we were named, we existed. That consciousness existed. So if we subtract those false identity cores, then we begin to see who we really are. We begin to really recognize that the false identity is merely a subjective reality. It's an illusion that everyone is experiencing. It's the ego. And the ego can easily be misconstrued, though, as someone who is boisterous or, that guy has an ego mentality. But in reality, the ego is simply who you think you are. It's the entire makeup of who you think you are. Only when that illusion is destroyed and you go back to the core of your identity, the core, the true you, then we're all on the same page. And that is where the true manifestation of the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, manifest. And this is what Christ was speaking of. I am, the I am. Not the who I think I am. Not the who I am and who you are. We are the I am. We are sons and daughters of God. In reality, we're just children. We don't even have a sexual identity outside of course, and some of you may say, well, there's a clear physical identity of sex. Yes, that is correct. But identifying with that to such a degree that we use it as a tool to compare and divide. And then we do this with race, we do it with nationality, we do it with all these fake identity cores. And recognizing that none of those things are who you are and who you really are. And you get to that place by erasing the identity, by getting calm, by getting still. Be still and know that I am. Get rid of all of the false identity. Once this happens, your lens on reality gets adjusted. The lens that you're looking through right now is through the false identity. The lens that you will look through when you recognize what you really are, is you get to look back into the illusion and you see everyone operating within the subjective reality. And it's interesting to see the ego work when we look back into the illusion. When you look back into the illusion from this side of the double-sided mirror, you see everyone operating out of ego. You see everyone operating, every decision that someone makes, every choice that they're making is made out of a false perception of who they are. It is an identity core that they're trying to uphold or fulfill. And if you really want to mess with somebody, not intentionally, but this is why people get irritated, because they believe they are something. And if that is challenged in any way, they believe this to a certain extent, guess what? When you find out who you really are, you don't have to believe. You know it's real. You know you're real. You know your consciousness is real. All you have to do is be still. Focus. Erase the subjective reality. And when you do that, and you go back to the core, you see it all, and everything becomes clear. And the reality that you are, your consciousness is eternal. It has no beginning and no end. It cannot get sick. It cannot die. It cannot be destroyed. This vessel carries it, and it resides here on this earth in this vessel. But when Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they are doing," when they're hanging him on the cross, he has ascended to this place that he knows who he is enough to look back into their subjective reality and know they haven't figured it out yet. This is Christ saying, essentially giving the lost people grace. And when I say lost, it's interesting because when I was practicing Christian, I thought I had it figured out. That, of course, Jesus came to this earth. He died for everyone's sins. Sacrificed. God sacrificed His Son on the cross for my salvation, and that was the extent of my faith at that time. That Jesus came, died for me. He is my Savior. But I didn't. It's not taught at the pulpit that Jesus transcended ego identity. That's what He did. That is exactly what Christ did. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Essentially says, you're all living in your ego, and no man is above another. The place where Christ was the same place that Buddha was when Buddha said, "I am awake." Are you a god? No. Are you a demigod? No. Are you human? No. You aren't. You are not. Your spirit is not. Your spirit is in a human body. But that consciousness is not human. It is beyond human. And you say, "Oh, I'm very much human." No, your flesh is. But you are consciousness. That which perceives. That which can see the ego and the ego mechanisms in place working. If you want to be awakened, be still and know that you are here. Everything from your name to your race to your nationality to your religion, these are all subjective realities. Erase them all and get back to yourself. And once you do, get back to me. Take it easy.